Now, you just talk through a bit what you do, because you independently assess, effectively, don't you, the efficiency and effectiveness of the police in the public interest.
That's right. I mean, what we don't do is individual complaints and individual things that go wrong. We're more interested in systemic matters, whether the police are effective, whether they're efficient, whether the public are getting the right service.
And what is your assessment of that right now, then?
For the Met in particular, it's in a bad place, and we all know that. It's well documented that public trust in the Met is at a low ebb, and we've got the Met in, quote, special measures, as it's sometimes called. So I think there's a widespread recognition that there's an awful lot to be done.
What's gone wrong with the Met?
In the past, I've described it as complacent, as arrogant, as defensive, and I think there's been a reluctance to accept the scale of the problems, and it's hit some lower-level leadership stuff, it's basic standards sometimes, and it's a culture across the Met and perhaps wider policing as well that isn't where it ought to be.
Now, of course, you're not commenting on individual cases rightly, but just to reflect on what we've seen, Wayne Couzens, a serving police officer, murdering Seva Everard; David Carrick, another serving police officer, admitting 71 sex offenders; serving police officers taking pictures of the bodies of 2 murdered sisters, sharing them on WhatsApp. It's extraordinary. I kind of feel like in any other organisation, they'd just clear out the leadership team, like the heads would go.
Well, they have got a new commissioner and a new top team. I think under Mark Rowley, who's taken over, and his leadership team around him, it does feel different. I think they've smelt the coffee. They understand that they can't any longer sort of write this off as a few bad apples. It's something much more endemic than that. They've got a long way to go, however. This is not something that you're going to turn around overnight. There's 42,000 people in the Met, and what they've got to get to is just every one of those people behaving at all times in a way that the public have a right to expect. Now, the police are the public and the public are the police, and this is this sort of saying that goes way back. But I think we're entitled to hold the police to a higher standard than the general public. And so particularly in the last few months, I've been inspecting on vetting and who gets in and misconduct procedures, and they're not tight enough. It's too easy for the wrong people to join the police. And we've made lots and lots of recommendations that, if enacted, should start to turn things around.
Yeah, on vetting, I was interested, you said recently your analysis showed around 1 in 10 officers should never have made it through vetting.
Well, that was 1 in 10 of the cases we looked at, which wasn't a random sample.
OK.
But it still adds up to hundreds of people who have joined the police in the last 3 years that we don't think should have.
And can you just explain, what does that mean? Is that because they've had prior convictions? Is that because what is it?
Yeah, it's all of that. It's prior convictions, it's links with criminals that are too close and not really explained. It's not being entirely honest on their application. It's a whole series of things like that we looked at and just said, this person shouldn't have joined.
I mean, these are clear red flags, right? This is not giving, like, a bit of a shaky answer in an interview. That's the big red flag.
Yeah, big red flags. Now, what there shouldn't be is a zero-tolerance approach, so anybody that's got any blemish on their record shouldn't automatically be disbarred from being a police officer. That just wouldn't be fair. But where there is a question, where there is doubt, there should be measures put in place to monitor these people, to keep a closer eye on them, and that's not happening either.
I've got to ask you, this has been going on for a while. Have you guys been doing your jobs properly as well? You're supposed to be inspecting the police. Why hasn't all this been raised earlier?
We're not a regulator, we're an inspectorate, and we've been saying this for years and years and years. I think what happened last year after the Wayne Couzens murder is the Home Secretary then got us to look specifically at the Met's counter-corruption, at vetting across policing to tie up some of these issues. Now, the Carrick case came out after we'd done this inspection, but if you look at our recommendations, the majority of them were very pertinent to the sort of things that went wrong in Carrick. So I am quietly confident now that if all the recommendations get enacted, we're going to change. And Suella Braverman, who now commissioned me to come back to her in April and see how all the police forces around the country are getting on with enacting those recommendations. So there is a kind of weight of effort behind this and a recognition that has gone on too far and it's got to change.
It's interesting that you said you have been flagging this for a while. Who hasn't been listening to you? Is it previous Home Secretaries? Is it the police? What?
No, I don't think you blame an individual. This is systemic across policing. I think policing is challenged. It's got a lot to do. We're always challenging the police what their priorities are. But I think the whole idea of just how important it is for policing that the wrong people don't get in and the wrong people don't stay in has not quite been recognised as being as important as it is.
Yeah, I mean, I guess one of the reasons it's important is public confidence in the police. And I'm thinking, particularly about women, and particularly women who are reporting sexual crimes to the police as well. And, if you look at the statistics, maybe they're right to not have confidence. I think it's around 1% of reported rapes end in a conviction. I mean, has rape effectively been decriminalised?
I think when our report, we looked specifically at police misconduct through the eyes of women serving in policing. And while there are plenty of women who've had great careers and gone to the top of policing, most of them, if not all of them, have had to endure some completely unacceptable behaviour on the way there. So I'm not talking about, slightly ribald comments. I'm talking about sexual assault in many cases, totally inappropriate behaviour in the workplace.
By fellow officers? By
fellow officers, and then being reluctant to report it because you think you'll be the person that's then stigmatised in some way as a result. So the culture of misogyny within policing is something that is there, it's real, and it's absolutely got to be dealt with.
That's really concerning as well, isn't it? Because, if people are going to the police for help with, the most sensitive things, the things that, people feel have ruined their lives, frankly, and you're saying that you can't really necessarily trust that the person you're dealing with is not going to be misogynistic.
I mean, I think my message to the public generally would be, in general, you should trust the police. What I think we're aiming for here is a situation where we're automatically assuming that we can trust the police without having to ask these questions. I think there's a long way to go before we're there.
Mm-hmm. I'm interested to know your thoughts as well on the London Fire Brigade. I know that you look at fire services as well, an independent report in November finding some pretty awful examples of racism, sexism. And we did speak to the union leader of the London Fire Brigade's union as well. And he was saying, look, there is a failure of leadership, and we've been flagging it for a while as well, the union, and they're not doing enough.
Many of the problems with the London Fire Brigade are mirrored in the Met. We've also actually got the London Fire Brigade in, quote, special measures, largely as a result of a really unpleasant culture that's highlighted in the report you refer to. So we get that. I think fire services, like police, have got a long way to go to reform and be the sort of workplace that I think the public has a right to expect, and they're a long way from it.